On today's episode of The Loud Quiet, saying yaw to the unexpected. Empty nesters go to Germany.
Hey, buddy, welcome back to The Loud Quiet. And it's a little bit of a welcome back to actually Clancy and me as we are sitting here in the studio for the first time in a couple of weeks. And it's nice to be back in the studio. Hope you all enjoyed some of the episodes that we put while we were away. The one where we were guests on Lynn's episode talking about caring for aging parents. Great podcast that she runs there. And I hope that y'all enjoyed that as much as we enjoyed being a part of that episode as well.
And you can find those episodes along with all of our other ones on our Facebook group, which we would love for y'all to join, The Loud Quiet, Emptiness Living. We really dialed in on talking about dealing with a parent that has Alzheimer's.
Yeah. This episode is going to be about the reason why we were away for a couple of weeks, and that was we took a 2-week trip to Germany. Technically, we actually did 3 countries, Germany, Austria, and Spain. The majority, of course, though, of the trip, 98%, was Germany. And if we are a little disheveled, if we are a little confused, if you see more jump cuts, it is because the jet lag is still inside of us a little bit.
It is still lagging.
Yes. And we wanted to talk about Germany because it's not necessarily a place that we would have put at the top of our list.
No. And I don't think it was at the top of our list. It just so happens that my brother, some of you know, my older brother Chad, and his wife live in Germany, and their time is wrapping up there. And so we wanted to make sure that we got over there to visit while they were still there so we could do things with them. And it's always nice to have a free place to stay to take away some of the cost of your travels.
It almost was half of the trip that we were staying with them, which kudos to them for being willing to host us. They were incredible hosts. They were so kind and so, welcoming. I know that, I might get a little tired of having people in my place, and they didn't seem to flag of that at all until the day that we left.
And that was the reason that we decided Germany was going to be our getaway. We wanted the kids to be able to go, but we just couldn't work it out with their schedules. And so you and I were like, all right, we're going, which, it's interesting because this was really the first long 2-week long trip that we have done without the family.
Hey, here's to being empty nesters then. All right.
I know, yes. And
I don't think I realized that.
No, I didn't either until I was just thinking about that and thinking about how different this trip was, because you and I have both been to Germany before. I went as an adult. I was pregnant with Tegan. You went as a college grad backpacking. 2 totally different trips.
Yeah.
But I did study abroad when I was in college as well and traveled all over. It's very interesting how the empty nest travel is just different than when we were that age.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, I can think of a couple of answers.
Well, your trip was a little different than mine.
When I'm a backpacker in 95 with a budget, and yes, there's inflation, but with a budget of $50 a day, including lodging. Yeah, I'd say our trip's a little bit different.
Yeah, no, and that is nice when you have the resources to be able to, do the things. But also just the maturity level and really being interested in the culture. Not that I'm saying we weren't back then, but it was almost back then. It was, okay, we need to hit this city, we're checking it off. We need to hit this city, we're checking it off. This was a little more, I really was invested in each of these cities that we went to.
And I think we chose, this is both an empty nest element, and I think it's a testament to how we like to travel now. It was less important for us to hit all of the German cities. There are things that we did not see.
No,
and there are things that people talk about, oh, these are wonderful places to go. We didn't see them. It allowed us to spend more time in the destinations that we did. I mean, we really only had 3 main hubs in that trip.
We did not stop on this trip, at all. There was no rest day. There was no, unless you count sitting on the trains when we did that. But it was go, go, go. So if you added in basically the other part of the country that we didn't get to.
Right.
You'd have to be there for a month, I would imagine, to really be able to do all the things.
It's always good to have a reason to go back.
But we really were surprised, I guess would be the word, at how much we really did enjoy it. Not that we were thinking we
Yeah.
weren't going to enjoy it, but I had been exposed to the Christmas markets. That's what I did with your mom, a Christmas market cruise. We got a little bit of history, I think, in that trip, but not a ton because the focus was hitting all the Christmas markets. So this was a different trip, and we just learned so many things that just surprised and shocked us.
This is a country that folks need to put on their list higher than I think is how many people rank it. People put Greece, they put Italy, they put Spain, they put the UK on there. And I'm not saying that those aren't places to go. Frequently, Germany doesn't hit the list, and it's one that should be in folks' top.
A good reason to go is because it was a lot easier than we thought it was going to be.
When you think of Germany, you think it's not especially for those of us that grew up in Texas that have been exposed to Spanish or maybe even taken a bunch of Spanish classes. Well, countries like Spain and Italy, there's a lot of words that are similar. There's just a feel to it that those feel easier than certainly the UK with English or any of the other English-speaking countries. I was thinking we would have a harder time getting around. And one of the elements was, yes, anytime that I tried to speak my very crappy college German, almost immediately I'd get shut down with, oh, it's okay, I speak English. This was not just the tour guides. This was not just the folks in the
taxi
hotels.
drivers.
It was taxi drivers, like things that you don't normally get in countries. There was so much English spoken.
Yes, and as soon as we set foot, I mean, I literally think it happened in the first train station we were in. I am German descent. You know, I have the blonde hair. I look, you know, I don't know if my facial features look German or what, but I mean, people were just coming up to me and starting to speak, and I was like, I'm sorry, I don't speak German. And the thing is, even when you would say that, they just kept talking to me. I was like, no, I really don't. And that happened multiple times on this trip. So my last name is very German, which was nice that, you know, when we went, we had a reservation somewhere that Chad made, and, you know, it's so nice when they're like, oh, yes, okay, you know, instead of, can you spell that?
Yeah. There's just something to the country that feels familiar. It has a very, gosh, I don't want to overstate this. When you're walking around, when you're through the cities, when you're through the train stations, when you're through the transportation and the restaurants, there was a lot that just felt similar to the U.S. It wasn't... even things like they eat dinner at a time that we're accustomed to eating dinner in the U.S., whereas if you think of Italy, where dinner's like, well, okay, 8 o'clock. If you want to eat early, you can eat at 8, right? So those sorts of things just felt very comfortable. Markets felt normal. Restaurants felt normal. And that made it easier that you didn't have to always be doing this sort of locational translation in your head or experiential translation.
We never felt out of place, I think, is what,
That's a lot better way of saying it.
It's just, when we have been to Japan, we obviously don't look Japanese. When we've been to Italy, we don't look Italian. We didn't stand out like in some of the countries that we've visited before.
I like you saying that. Along with our look, I think the behavioral expectations are very similar. There are clearly differences, but the behavioral expectations are very similar between Germany and the U.S., things that are polite manners or impolite, as opposed to when you go to another place where you have to be thinking, okay, does this work in that culture? For the most part, our natural behaviors aligned with the expectations there.
And there were some things that I was like, ooh, I wish we acted more like that in the U.S. The train situation was very user-friendly.
And we're going to talk about
yes.
that. We've decided that, so here, little tease, next episode, we're going to get into some more specific travel tips that'll be inspired by Germany, likely applicable to other places, that will help if you're thinking, hey, this is the empty nest trip that I want to take.
And especially because I know this is coming up on high travel season, especially
Yeah.
for people that still may have one in college or in high school even.
Well, also,
that was nice to be there when it wasn't high travel season.
amen to that.
Yeah.
And we'll also, over time, we'll be throwing some of these tips on the Facebook group. So again, if you haven't joined the Facebook group, head over to the Loud Quiet Empty Nest Living, sign up, and become a part of our Empty Nest community.
Yeah. The next thing I think that we talked about that really spoke to us and just was unexpected was the history. And again, I kept saying on the trip, I wish I would have paid more attention in history. You
Yeah.
got to take it in college. I did not. But again, though, the stuff that was probably introduced in our history books back then was a small snippet of what we learned on our tours that we did in each of the big cities that we went to. I was so interested and blown away by some of the things that we learned.
As we're thinking about that, I remember when we first got to Berlin and we jumped on that boat tour, and hearing him point out this building and that building, and applying it to the things that you did hear in that little paragraph that you're describing, or the things that I studied in all the Cold War classes that I took. Berlin really started to amplify that, and we started to get that first taste of it there as we were on that boat trip, when they were describing, look at that symbol right there. That symbol is what was used when it was East Berlin. And that symbol was what it was when it was West Berlin. And these very distinct things that we'd heard about, but to see it and to feel it. And even those symbols, like the street crossing where it's walk or don't walk, Ample Man is this icon that was generated in East Berlin. I had no idea. And that's how they used to be able to tell which side of Berlin you were on, as the walk or don't walk. Is it that little dude's logo, or is it just the traditional Western style of? And all those things start to really come alive when you're there. And I just wasn't expecting to be that interested in all of those elements. I thought, hey, let's go see the Berlin Wall. Let's go see Checkpoint Charlie. There was so much more richness to it. And there was a lot that I thought I knew about some of the darker pieces of German history. The rise to Nazism, and specifically, we went outside of Munich and went to Dachau, the concentration camp that is located there. And I learned so much more about the slippery slope of how they got to that point that I didn't really appreciate before. Because in my mind, every concentration camp was something that was created and established to affect and create the Holocaust. That it was there for the extermination of the Jewish population, and just this murderous element. And you always think, how does it get to that point like that? And that was the part that I was very surprised to learn. These were initially set up as super prisons.
That's what it started with, was political prisoners, but it didn't take long for it to shift into, and now let's start putting the people that we don't like in here as well, and that we don't think would create a race that we want to be around. When we saw the tribute to the Holocaust in Berlin, this monument is just, you look at it at first and you're like, okay, when you get down in it, that's where I was getting down in it. And if you've never seen it, you can look it up online and see what I'm talking about. But it basically looks like this place of blocks.
It looks like a scattering of blocks.
Blocks, yes. But they get bigger and deeper and taller, and when I got into the deepest part, I could feel just the physical of, I have to get out of here. Like and it just gave you that intense feeling of, I need to get out.
And it was the gradualness of that I think is amplified well inside of the sculpture and mirrored in our learning inside the concentration camp is that you start out and it's just this little thing, and then as you keep walking in, suddenly you are staring up at a block that is higher than you can possibly imagine, and you have trouble even seeing your way out of it.
And all three of our guides in three separate cities talked about how people said, oh, they just didn't know what was going on, and they all everyone knew what was going on and what was happening there. And just especially our tour guide at Dachau, just hearing her talk about how humans could treat other humans that way, it's something that everyone should see at some point if you're able to. Feeling that and knowing that history, and everyone knows that part of Germany's story, the amount of rebuilding and coming together that these cities did after the war and after they were bombed and destroyed, it's incredible. And that again was something I never knew of.
I don't think I really appreciated what the bombing and the rebuilding was like until tour guides were saying, well, that building, and actually all of these buildings that look like they had been around since the 14th century, that was built in
1995, or finished in 1995, some of them.
And they would show us, hey, look at this brick. See how it doesn't have the bullet holes in it? Mm-hmm. Well, then that was the new build. But look at this brick. It's got the bullet holes. So they had left, they in many buildings found a way to integrate the damage into the rebuild. The rebuilding of it was inspirational.
Yeah. And that's because some of it was happening during our time, which, again, we all saw David Hasselhoff on the wall. And I'm so glad that our neighbor told us about going to Dresden, because that was one of the worst hit city. I mean, they had to rebuild almost everything. And then I get a Facebook post from someone who is a younger mom and said her uncle helped rebuild some of those streets. I mean, it's just crazy to think that this stuff was going on while I was in college.
And I think that's what made this history feel different than, say, touring San Gimignano or something like that in Italy. Okay, yeah, some dead king did something back then and built some towers, yada, yada. They're pretty, but it didn't mean as much, as opposed to, like you said, this was while we were alive. I remember Reagan standing in front of the wall, tear down this wall. We remember Hasselhoff. We remember those things.
And it was also really neat that we were there on some major significant dates.
Yeah.
When to the end of the war.
It was the 80th anniversary of VE Day while we were in Berlin.
Yeah.
I want to add, one thing that caught me was when the tour guide pointed out, look at how awful this was. And look at how we have rebuilt. The human propensity to rebuild and come out of that, as evidenced as what happened coming out of World War II, serves as inspiration to her and served as inspiration to us, that what we're seeing now, there can be optimism even in the face of such incredible negative scenarios.
And I think that's why it was so important that they wanted to keep these things as memorials to what happened there. And I almost all of the big cities that had concentration camps all have some sort of memorial in place.
There's the famous quote, those who fail to learn history are doomed to repeat it. And in many cases, Germany is doing a very important and good job of helping people not forget history.
That part was a little heavy, so we'll take a little
Let's take a little break here.
And move on to one of the last things that we really enjoyed about Germany was just the outdoorsiness of it and
Yeah.
festivals that they have going on. I just had such a different perspective of Germany. One, maybe because when I was there it was December and it was freezing cold and
The last thing you wanted to do was be outside.
yeah, and which we were a lot, but I just didn't know everything that was right at the fingertips of some cities.
Well, and think about the trip that you were on. You were focused on cities. You were focused on markets, and even if it wasn't the big city and it was a village, it's still a village. We had that opportunity, something you'll want to do when you're in Stuttgart, and it was to go to this waterfall hike. And wow. And first of all, wow, because it was a public holiday and how many people were out there experiencing that. And you saw it in the rest of the country, the amount of national parks that they have, the amount of focus on hiking.
Even right behind Chad and Noom's house is a huge park that we just went out there the first evening after dinner and just walked all around. And you could just wander back there. And that's right behind their house.
So many walking pathways. The cities have done such a great job of integrating pathways. Now, watch out, because the bikes share it too. And you got to watch out for the bikes. If you hear that bell, get out of the way. It is designed so that people have access to the outdoors because there's such a craving for, let's go for a walk.
With the outdoors, then, like I said, they have big festivals. And it just seemed like there was something going on in every city we saw, 8 weddings or maybe even more.
Wedding.
Yeah, it was wedding weekend season.
Lots
whatever
of
you want to
bachelorette
call
parties.
it. Yes, tons of bachelorette parties in every city that we went to, including Madrid. So we had scheduled our trip around this one festival, which is basically like their spring version of Oktoberfest.
Right.
Everyone gets dressed up, and I mean, everyone gets dressed up.
You would feel out of place if you weren't wearing lederhosen or the traditional dress.
So we did. We ordered our stuff off of Amazon, and it was fun. And it was fun to get into that and be dressed up and enjoy it.
We were sitting on a city bus wearing lederhosen and the traditional dress.
Yes. And
it was normal.
For the first few stops, it was just us, but then some more people got on, and we're like, oh, okay, hey. But nobody looked at you weird.
Everyone knew,
No.
okay, they're going to the festival.
Yeah.
There was nothing odd about doing that. The embracing of that culture was fun.
And again, I'm standing in the train station, and I see this old lady starting to and I was like, she's going to come up and talk to me. She's going to come up and talk to me. And yeah, she came up and asked a question. That was fun, getting to experience that and dancing on the benches and singing the traditional Proust German songs.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
That was a lot of fun. So there were a couple of things, though, that kind of shocked us. Something you had expected, one you had expected that didn't really meet the expectations.
Well, everyone, myself included, is like, oh yeah, the Autobahn. You can go 1 billion miles an hour. The Autobahn is so awesome. As a kid, I would have this
No
fantasy
speed
of
limit.
driving on the Autobahn. I can't wait to do it. And yes, it's true. There are sections of the Autobahn that are no speed limit. You know what, though? There's still traffic. There's still, and now I will say this, and Chad's right, there's no road rage.
No.
You drive in the right lane until you want to pass somebody, you get over in the right lane, because Chad was cruising along at about 100 miles an hour, and we got over, and bam, people were just passing us like we were doing 20 miles, like we were in a school zone. That part was interesting. I was just surprised by, the Autobahn really wasn't all that cool, because that portion's so short. You get jammed, and then boom, it'll go to 120 kilometers, which is 60 or something. And then we'd be driving 40 miles an hour and 30 miles an hour. And you don't speed in Germany. If there's a speed limit, it's not, hey, you go 5 over. You make sure you don't go over that even by a kilometer per hour.
In Stuttgart, and I don't know how it is in every other city, but there are cameras not very far apart. And yes, you will get tickets in the mail if you're caught texting, if you're caught
you can't have your phone
going
in your hand,
over
thank God.
speed limit, if you don't come to the stop sign. I mean, it's basically...
They'll get you.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And so, you know what? the Autobahn wasn't as cool as I thought it'd be.
Yeah, that was surprising. And then the fact that no one drinks water over there for such an outdoorsy country. Now, when we were hiking, I did see people with their water bottles, but at the restaurants, I think it's because they consider beer water. It's made with water.
And the beer's good. No jokes here about, the beer's crappy. It tastes like... No. It's good. It's got its flavor. I think they think they're hydrating with beer.
Yes. I mean, you have to ask and pay for water at every restaurant. And when we went with certain people, they'd say, now, you know that water's more expensive than the beer. I was like, I don't care. I need water. I said, that's all we drink at home.
They weren't lying.
Yeah.
The water was more expensive than the beer.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was something, though, that I was surprised by. I expected to be shocked by expensive prices. And it wasn't. It's not that it's cheap. I'm not suggesting that this is less expensive than some of our higher rent districts in the U.S., but I didn't feel like you hear about Switzerland where it's just crazy. I felt like everything was normal. And some things were actually straight up legit cheap. The beer was cheap.
Yeah. And lots of restaurants we ate at were cheap. And what we found is at the touristy destinations, they didn't gouge you like they do sometimes over here. Now, one thing I will say, I was shocked at the amount of smoking that still, I mean, it was like we were not the norm for not having cigarettes or vape. And I mean, and it wasn't even just vapes, it was full blown cigarettes.
That was very surprising.
Yeah. I was shocked that many people still smoke. There was not one place that we went that people were not
I don't
smoking.
think you could do it indoor at the restaurants. We ate outdoors so often.
No, the bars.
The bars definitely. Mm-hmm. And I think it was because we sat outdoors for most. I think we only ate indoors for a couple of meals.
I mean, even outdoors, the person next to you is just, on both sides of you, they're just chain smoking. And you're like, oh my gosh. That really surprised me that has not. And it was all ages. Young kids. Yeah, I mean, I saw it all.
Let's quantify that. We're not talking about elementary school.
No. But like our kids' age, which really surprised me.
Yeah, the smoking was a shock.
Mm-hmm. So it was a really, really good trip. Like I said, I was just invested in everything that we did. Mm-hmm. And usually by some times I'm like, okay, yes, I know
I can't walk through another museum and look at another painting again. I get it, but this was different.
I just felt like I learned so much. And I think because of the human factor of what happened there, just makes it even more reachable and understandable, and wanting to really listen and pay attention and hear what they have to say.
It was a surprisingly delightful trip. I was always looking forward to it. This one just ranked a lot higher than I expected it to rank. And I'm curious, because, hey, we got other destinations we want to go to. Have y'all had a trip at a place that you were like, I'm happy to go there, but then it really knocked your socks off? That's something, it was just different. It was a level above what you expected. Would y'all share that on the Loud, Quiet, Empty Nest Living Facebook page? I have enjoyed recounting our Germany trip with you, Clancy, and I hope that y'all enjoyed hearing about it as well. Put it at a much higher place on your list than you might have otherwise. Again, next week, next episode, stay tuned. We are going to be sharing some specific travel tips that we learned from Germany that'll be certainly applicable to Germany, but other places as well.
Totally applicable to everywhere. And there are things that we've done already, but
this will be great to, these are some specific, tangible things that you can apply to your next trip.
Yeah, so make sure and join us on the next episode of The Loud Quiet.